Welcome to No Longer Conformed. I'm Erik Garthe, and we are in class with Joseph. Lessons in God's Plan. In this session, we'll be looking at Genesis chapter 43, verses 1 to 34. The certain progress of God's plan. Before we get into our text for this session, let's just go back to last session just for a moment and just kind of review that a little bit. That question, why did God let it happen? Why did God let it happen? Just think about it for a moment. Just why did God let it happen? And apply it to your own life, to your own circumstance. Why did God let my parents get divorced? Well, it causes you to see the importance of dealing with bitterness. Why did God let a loved one die? Well, it forces you to consider eternity. Why did God let me have a roommate I just can't get along with? Well, it teaches you to see, or it helps you to learn how to relate with others. Why does God allow my stepfather to show favoritism to others? Well, it teaches you to seek God's unconditional love. Why did God allow me to have a handicapped father? Well, it shows you the need to be thankful for health. Why did God allow me to be raised in a non-Christian home? Well, it motivates you to pray for your parents. Why did God allow me to lose my job? It encourages you to rely on God rather than wages. Why did God allow my parents to be so strict? It's trained you to clearly distinguish right from wrong. Why does God allow unfair punishment? Well, it prompts you to consider partial guilt on your part. Why does God let the wicked prosper? Well, it makes you focus on true riches. Why did God let me be so lonely? It helps you turn your attention to Him. Why did God let me be born with a defect? It helps me overcome pride. Why does God let me be poor? Why does God allow me to have enemies? Why did God allow me to be adopted? Why did God allow me to have a disease? Why did God let it happen? Why? It was to help you to learn to see life from His point of view. Let me tell you a story. For 8 years, Jim and Jan Johnsonius sought International Mission Board appointment. Then, with language school complete and ministry in Argentina to begin, their automobile crashed on a 1993 August night. Jan recalls an ambulance rushed us to the nearest clinic, and we ended up in intensive care. From her bed, she heard personnel frantically working on Jim, and then silence. She knew he had died. Jan's recovery took months. The physical toll included 13 fractures. The spiritual toll included the question, why did God let it happen? Has God's purpose for her life ended? As she lay for weeks in a hospital in Argentina, the answer came. God had a captive audience, she said. When He spoke in the still, small voice, she was listening. He directed my attention to the pitcher of water on my bedside table. And then He said so clearly, my purpose for you is the same as it always has been. that you share the living water of Jesus Christ with the world. Don't be misled. Don't be misled. God is fully in control. He dealt with Joseph's brothers 20 years later. God will not stop until he accomplishes his will according to his plan. Pay attention to what's happened. Simeon's in jail in Egypt, and yet back home, it's business as usual. Really. Joseph's presumed dead. Simeon's in jail, and Jacob refused to let Benjamin go. The 10 brothers went back to their previous routines. Simeon's gone, but hey, we got plenty of food to eat. Read Genesis 43, verses 1 to 34. Let's just read that. Pay attention to see how this chapter illustrates human nature and God's persistence. Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to him, "Go back, buy us a little food." But Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you." And Israel said, "Why did you deal so wrongfully with me, as to tell the man whether you still had another brother?" But they said, "The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother?" And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, "Bring your brother down"? Then Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned this second time." And their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present to the man, a little balm and little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also and arise, go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved." So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon." Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, that he may make a case against us and seize us, to take us as slaves with our donkeys." When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house and said, "Oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand. And we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." But he said, "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet. and he gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house and bowed down before him to the earth. And then he asked them about their well-being and said, "Is your father alive, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they answered, Your servant our father is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. And then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Now his heart yearned for his brother, so Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. And he went into his chamber and wept there. And then he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself and said, "Serve the bread." And so they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. And then he took servings to them from before him. But Benjamin's servings was 5 times as much as any of the others, as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Look again at those first 2 verses. Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, "Go back, buy us a little food." You know, listen, God will disturb our superficial peace. Once again, they had to deal with the matter. Out of sight, out of mind won't last forever. Just when you think the problem is gone, wham! Now watch how our human nature provokes us to legalism. Look at verses 11 and 12, and then verse 15. And their father said to them, their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels, and carry down a present for the man, a little balm, a little honey, spices, and myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double money in your hands, and take back in your hands the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks." Perhaps it was an oversight. And then verse 15. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hands, and arose and went down to Egypt. And they stood before Joseph. They tried to buy Joseph's approval. When things aren't going well, we tend to work harder to please God. It's called religious compensation. This process usually happens when our conscience is struck with guilt. You know, kind of like those who attend church only periodically to appease their guilt, to hope God sees them there and is fooled. But Jesus Christ is the only provider, and the sinner is but a receiver. We can't buy God's favor. Look at verse 16. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal, and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon." And we are bent, listen, we are bent to accept peace at any cost. Look again at verses 33 and 34. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. And then he took servings to them from before him. But Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. This encounter brought only a hollow joy between the Egyptian leader, Joseph, and his brothers. They felt better. He felt better. In today's language, it's all good. A casual observer may be fooled by the outward appearance of peace, but true reconciliation is still yet to come. This superficial peace itself will also be disturbed. All sin is confronted by God in His time, according to His plan. Judge yourself that you be not judged. It's not an easy thing to do. It's kind of like peeling an onion. Each layer brings more painful sins that need to be confessed. Each layer brings more tears of remorse, but each layer results in greater freedom through forgiveness. Deal with the problems of your life, the sins of life. Don't let them get out of hand. You have a great day.